Welcome back to Identiverse 2025. It is day 3. I am here with CyberRiskTV in the Mandalay Bay Convention Center. And last day that we're going to be recording from here. I'm Adrian Sanabria, your host, and joining me is Jackie McGuire.
Good morning. Thank
Morning,
you for
Jackie.
having me back.
Yeah.
I survived my experience last night, so I promised I would come back if I survived, and I did.
So you saw Kenny Chesney at the Sphere.
Yeah, the Sphere. So for people who don't know, the Sphere is this, I don't know how tall it actually is. I would guess about 20, 25 stories. Yeah, and it's a perfect sphere. And it has LED screens both inside and outside. So from outside the Sphere, it's this really cool, like they do like emoji faces and all these things. Inside the Sphere, it's this whole experience, and they've got like subwoofers in your seats. Although ours only worked like twice, so I wasn't sure if they were broken or if they're just expensive, so they only run them. It was also like 50 degrees in there, and I know it's Vegas. So
Really?
it was so cold in there, and they were like over conditioning it, I think. And I mean, in a big open, having worked in HVAC, in a giant open dome, there's no way to do it unless you have massive airflow, circulating, and there's like a wind tunnel in there.
I want to see the power usage for that when you're doing a show, because you got screens on the outside, you got screens on the inside,
and they're all
you've
producing
got
heat.
all the audio, and all that's going to produce heat, and they're cooling it.
Wow. And so it was freezing, but the whole experience was really cool. Like, obviously not my top choice of music. The show was great. Found out Kenny Chesney's 57, still looks amazing, still performs really well, so I was pretty impressed by that. It was a cool.
I could not name a single Kenny Chesney song.
I was telling
I'd probably recognize one.
Yeah, I was telling our crew we
many.
went with that, like, I was expecting to be like, there were so many songs that. No.
Oh, really?
It was the opposite of seeing The Killers. I went to see The Killers, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this song. Oh yeah. And like, I knew this is the complete opposite. And I was really expecting, there was one that was like, no shoes, no shirt, no problem. But nothing, I didn't recognize anything other than like maybe a clip from like a truck commercial or something.
I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, and just somehow managed to avoid country music for the most part.
Yeah, I remember in 3rd grade, they did make us learn the line dance to the Chattahoochee in gym class. So that was like and my parents liked old country, right?
Yeah.
Like George Jones, Dolly Parton, like all of those older, but just not, I don't listen to pop country.
It's so important that we all learned line dancing, but not how to manage money. In school.
Who needs to balance a checkbook?
Forget that. But, we can do square dancing.
Understand APR. And you probably went to school about the same time I did, where President Clinton had the whole like Fit Kids in America thing, where we all had to run the mile and do like the box whatever it was, and so we got. I feel like our gym classes were more intense than most other kids.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. Exercise is good. You need to get kids tired for them to pay attention in class. I feel like that's important.
This is true.
So today's our last day. We've got 2 interviews today. We've got women in identity, and then we also immediately after this have SDG Corporation with Ajay Gupta. So they should be here shortly. Yeah. And we are doing Enterprise Security Weekly live from here, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we gave a little sneak peek yesterday, so if you want to know what we're doing, you can go listen to that. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's our first time recording the podcast live together, so that's exciting.
So it's going to be noon Pacific, and we're going to do the news. It's going to be very exciting. Tina's coming on right at 12:30 Pacific, so the news will be done on time.
Yes,
right?
Yes, maybe
30 minutes. And then we're going to wrap up after the podcast for the day, and we'll be done.
Yeah, we'll head home, and I actually have a week at home next week, which is unusual, the full week. So
I am scheduling. I'm working on the Armenian Central Bank with my travel out to Armenia next week. So I don't know which day I'm leaving. It's going to be probably Thursday.
Interesting.
So it's going to be. I haven't checked what international power adapters I need yet. I need to figure that out. I'm very nervous taking such a long trip, and a week out, I don't know what day I'm leaving.
What you're doing,
what my flight.
I've only.
So that's a little nerve-wracking.
I've only flown to Europe a couple times, and it was always like way overpacked, and we ended up dragging 3 suitcases, and it was. I feel like you don't know anything there, right? It's not like you're just like, I forgot something. I'm going to go to Walmart.
Yeah. So I did a podcast this morning. It's a podcast that focuses on third-party risk, and it was interesting. We were going over it, and identity just kept coming up and kept coming up because we're talking about a lot of breach effects or the details that are coming out of some of these breaches. So everybody's probably seen the UK retail companies like Mark and Spencer that got hit, and so they found some journalists found the common denominator seems to be Tata Consulting. And so a lot of them are using Tata Consulting for all kinds of things, but basically employees there have access into these networks, and we know attackers have recognized that there's bang for your buck when you hit a services provider. Instead of hacking one company, directly, you can just hack a services provider who has a connection into maybe hundreds, thousands of companies, right? And it seems, we don't know for sure, but that
it would be hard to believe that.
We know Mark and Spencer's did come from Tata, so the other two, it'd be a heck of a coincidence for that not to be the same route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have some configuration setup that's common amongst Tata customers that they were able to exploit elsewhere, but initially discovered. Yeah, so I was telling you before we started that my kid's school actually had a phishing attack issue, and I got an email yesterday afternoon, and it's summer vacation in Arizona already, and it said, hey, a phishing email basically made its way into students' inboxes, but that happened because I think a faculty member clicked on a link in a phishing email. So they completely shut all internet email service down immediately for the whole district, removed the email from a bunch of students' inboxes, and now are going back to see if
sounds like a good
happened.
Response for a school.
It was, in the detail of the message, it was like, we're always focused on cybersecurity. We're going to do another phishing awareness training for all of our students. I was really impressed because we're a smaller, we're the next biggest town outside Tucson, Marana. And for being a somewhat smaller kind of suburb town, the response was almost immediate and with really clear communication, which would be a masterclass for some of our Fortune 500s who can't manage that.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah,
and then the other one we talked about was Deloitte was managing some VPNs for the state of Rhode Island. So come to find it was a Deloitte employee's account that was hit there, and that was the path in. Yeah. And they were in for 5 months before the attack was detected.
So I want to say that I actually wrote 2025 predictions last year. It was either a 2024 prediction or 2025, and one of them was MSPs, MSSPs, and consulting firms will be the new top target because it's concentrated risk, concentrated opportunity. So I wrote about this. I predicted this.
It's happening.
As an analyst, that's my job, right? Is to cherry pick the things I was right about and only talk about those after the fact.
That's important. We won't talk about the other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Who cares what I was wrong about?
All right, that's all for now. We'll be back with you in just a moment with our first interview with SDG. Welcome to Identiverse 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRiskTV Studio on the expo floor at the Mandalay Bay Conference Center in Las Vegas. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me for this interview is Kay Shepard, U.S. Ambassador for the Women in Identity. And you're also the Executive Director of the Kantara Initiative as well.
I am, yes.
So tell me a little bit about Kantara first, and then we'll get to Women in Identity.
Okay, thanks. So the Kantara Initiative is a nonprofit organization. It's a membership organization and industry group. Our focus is really around digital identity and all the various topics, but we really work in the area of standards. Yeah. We are a certification body. In the US, we certify and do third-party audits for credential service providers, for identity proofing and authentication proofing solutions against the NIST standards, which are the 863, which is the NIST Digital Identity Guidelines. We also run a certification body. We're accredited in the UK, and we do the same thing for their digital identity and attributes trust framework. But the membership side of the organization really focuses on a lot of the cutting edge topics, the gaps, the up and coming issues. You know, we had a work group that focused on deep fakes issues and is now looking at shadow AI and looking at biometric data management and how those square with privacy and compliance. And we also are focused on mobile credentials, privacy around mobile credentials, and other kinds of topics, all related to digital identity. So we're a little bit of a think tank, and then the other half of us is, you know, these third-party auditors, which are the people that you love to hate because we're doing the audits for their solutions. But we provide that service for a lot of government agencies that want to know that solution providers have been looked at by third parties. Yes.
Third-party risk is a big deal. I actually do a podcast for another vendor that focuses on third-party cyber risk management. And we did it's monthly. We did the June edition this morning. And identity is attached to almost all these third-party incidents. Somebody's account is stolen, misused. It's and questionnaires just aren't cutting it, right? Like that's the due diligence a lot of companies do on their third-party providers. Is hey, are you doing the things you're supposed to? Yeah, of course I'm doing the check done. And more and more, it's looking like no, we actually need some more detail than that. We need somebody to look at the inside and make sure that you actually are doing the things that you say you're doing.
Exactly. And that's the role that Kantara plays. And I think more and more people are recognizing that third party conformance testing and like you say, you know, we're kind of looking under the hood because what I find is most vendors will say, yeah, we comply with all of this and we do all of this. But then sometimes when you take a little closer look, it may not be quite on all points, that really need to be a part of the standard. And what's interesting to me is it's a pretty rigorous process that they go through to get a trust mark and to be certified by us. But what I find is the companies are so proud of their work. When you've made it through that, I think they really feel like they've accomplished something.
Yeah. And you want some recognition, right?
Absolutely, and it's gives them a leg up in the market, honestly, because they can say, look, Kantara signed off on this. Actually, in the US, the federal government has a special procurement instrument schedule, and it specifically is for vendors who have been Kantara certified, and we are named.
Oh, wow.
Are you Kantara certified, right?
Okay.
And I know that some federal agencies are mandating they won't look at any vendor if they're not certified by us. So I think they have confidence about the process that we're going through, and that when we put that trust mark on there, they can really trust that. They can know that they really have been, I think, vetted and tested, and it just gives a lot more confidence and a lot more credibility to the vendors who are on that list. So anyway, I like to think it's a service and a benefit to the vendor community as well as to the relying parties and the purchasers. And as a nonprofit, we're sort of here to make things better, to improve the community and do what we can to really raise the level of competence and credibility.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's going to have a breach, we want it to be something where the attacker actually had to work for it, right? And
Yes.
It's the work you do doesn't guarantee that they're not going to get breached, but it'll at least say that they're not just completely winging it, and at least they're doing most of the stuff that they should be doing, and whether they keep up with that year round, because I imagine these are point in time audits.
Yes.
That there's only so much you can do, but let's at least set that bar.
Right. Well, and they have to, once they start, if they want to maintain their trust mark, they have to be audited every year.
Yeah.
So it is, but it's true, and I think it's a good point. But I think something you said earlier was something that I said yesterday at the Women in Identity Summit here at the Identiverse conference.
Good segue, right?
Yeah, well, you made the comment about identity as a part of all these things.
Yeah.
And I'm actually a lawyer by my profession, and about 10 years ago, I got recruited to come in and help with actually managing, and creating a new nonprofit that was a public-private partnership around identity, and I'd never been involved. But once I started to learn, and I began to see identity is a part of not just security, but of sort of systems everywhere.
Yeah.
And even in my background, I felt like the legal world, the court system, they should be worried about this. They should think about this, and they're not. And so it really got me interested in this field, which I would never have expected. But it's sort of like a place where you can change the world, where you could actually improve things across multiple industries and for consumers and businesses. I mean, I just don't know that people appreciate how sort of groundbreaking and central it is to quality of life for all of us. It really is sort of life-changing. So it's been exciting to be a part of that. And it's been nice to be a part of it in the women in identity world, too.
Yeah. I don't know if it's from Kantara, if it seemed like it, but to me it seemed like there's just a lot more focus, a lot more, thanks in part to breaches on identity and the importance of identity and getting it right. Just a lot of concentration risk we see as well in around identities, because I think the tech world didn't intend for your main email account to be for more than correspondence in the early days. But now it is the key to everything. You log in with your Apple account or with your Google account. Single sign-on was originally designed for businesses, but now, or social sign-on, they have different terms that they use for it. I don't think anybody, when I first got my Gmail account, I didn't think it was going to be the way I log into hundreds of different other services and applications.
Right. Absolutely. That's
and
very true.
Now that it is so central, I do worry about, man, if somebody at Google presses the wrong button, every now and then you hear the story about, my Google account got wiped out. Like I'd be in a tough spot.
I would too.
Yeah. So tell me more about, so this is Women in Identity's first summit at Identiverse?
Yes.
And what was the format of the summit? Like how many people attended? Give me some details here. Like was it like a 1 hour thing, a 4 hour thing?
So it was this year. It was just a couple of hours, maybe 2.5 total.
Okay.
And so we had multiple substantive sessions, and it was open to everyone. Although the majority of the people who attended were women, but there were several men there, which was really wonderful to see. Because really the issues are around inclusion, and that's not gender-based, right? It really goes beyond that. But I'm a volunteer with Women in Identity, which is also a nonprofit organization, and we sort of started as a group of women, and now, of course, we have thousands of members, and there are many men and women who are members, and it just sort of grew exponentially, but the name kind of stuck. But we're really looking beyond that. But it was amazing to see the participation. like I said, we had multiple sessions and covered a lot of different topics, including some of the research that the Women in Identity organization is trying to do.
Yeah.
And there were interactive sessions where the participants, were asked to do things and go through some exercises for themselves. And one of the most gratifying things for me is I was on a couple different panels. I was a speaker on one panel and I moderated another panel later in the afternoon, but was in the audience where we're sort of talking about how did we get into some of this work, including how did we get into the identity space,
right?
To see so many people nodding their heads in the audience. And what was also interesting is we were talking about, sort of what needs to happen, how do we build leadership and things like that. And one of the things that I commented on was the fact that we need men to step up to the plate. Men have to be a part of this. It's never, this is a joint project here. This isn't, just for the women. And it was interesting, the men in the room, how many women were all nodding their heads. And I said, so for all you guys out there, you got a lot of support here, people are saying, and we want you to be part of this, and we want to work together. And so it was really gratifying. There was a lot of that, and people that were really engaged in the topics that we discussed. So
I remember seeing Mariana Padilla, a few other folks I've seen make these statements on social media where they say, you know what, I don't want to go to a women-only event. I want to be a woman, at the event, right? Like at the main event, because we saw some of these, like Diana's initiative in cybersecurity going on simultaneously alongside a Black Hat or, some of these RSA, some of these larger conferences. And it's a good point. Like, I think there's obviously value in women getting together, planning, you're talking about the issues, feels like a safer space. But ultimately, isn't the goal, to be more in that more inclusive space with everyone, rather than to kind of separate yourself off. So I kind of get what she's saying there, and I think it's worth talking about, like how we do that, like what that ultimate goal is and what that looks like, and how we continue that conversation and have men in that conversation as well, right?
Yes, I think that's really, it is so true. And like I said, it was wonderful to see the men in the audience, and they were participating, and I just think everyone was very appreciative that everyone there was supportive of these issues around being more inclusive and addressing, the people there have their own subject matter expertise. They're here at an identity conference. So they're interested in that, and in the course of that, they recognize that being more inclusive makes for better product development. It serves the community, it serves the users. And in some of the research that the Women in Identity organization has done around the economic impact of inclusivity, what you see is there's money to be made. So, not for nothing.
I think women are slightly more than half of all humans. So be good to remember that.
Well, but even others, people of different socioeconomic positions, minorities, disabled folks, elderly. I mean, there's a lot of different demographics that are often excluded from being able to have identity and to really participate in a lot of different things for that reason. So it is more than just the women, but I think it's nice to be with a group of people that recognize that's important. We're not just talking about people who are outliers. We are talking about people that need to be brought in because it actually has benefits, not just altruistic, isn't it good that we're including everyone? It actually helps your bottom line, which never hurts.
I think it's good. The average man at a conference, should have at least heard some of the hair-raising stories that women have to tell, right? Yeah. Like just shocking things, and women will tell you these stories if you ask. Maybe not all women, but in my experience, almost every woman has these stories. right?
Yes.
Whereas I feel like there is no equivalent on the male side of things. You know, so there's this whole perspective that's just missing. I think if you're not aware of that perspective, aware of what's, and again, you know, more than just women, but you know, different ethnic backgrounds, you know, how people are treated, how they're looked at, how they experience things,
Right.
and it's fascinating too. You know, I love stories, you know, good stories, bad stories. I like hearing those experiences, and in Knoxville, Tennessee, I run B-Sides Knoxville.
Okay.
One of the organizers of this, the only original one left, but we've gone 11 years. And, you know, one of the things I learned early on, we noticed we weren't getting a lot of women submitting to the conference. You know, so we started asking women, like, you know, what would it take for you to submit to our call for papers? And they said, well, first of all, you don't have a code of conduct. You know, and I found out for a lot of women, it was just like, no code of conduct, not even considering your conference.
Wow.
I was like, okay, then, well, that's, you know, easy enough. We can put that code of conduct in place. And obviously, if we're going to put that in place, we want to be prepared to enforce it. You want to make sure people know where to report things if we have an issue. And we went a full decade. We went 10 events without an issue. And at that 10th event, we had to issue a permanent ban to somebody that we've always had an open bar every year. Like it has a very specific feel. You know, Knoxville has this nickname, the Scruffy City. And, you know, so there is alcohol at the event. You know, every time I give the opening event opening speech, I talk about, hey, we've never had an incident, you know, please don't be the source of our first one.
Sure.
And this person that got banned was not there for that opening talk.
Yeah.
And he never will be again. But
Wow.
it didn't even happen at the event. It happened at a bar afterwards. You know, but still, it was all the people from the event, and he was representing a well-known named company.
Oh my gosh.
that is on this expo floor at that event. So yeah, I felt like code of conduct still applied, because if I didn't do something about it, you know, there's a whole group of people that aren't going to come back next year, right? You know,
Yes.
and I can't let that happen. So it's you know, so I've been in that position where I've had to exercise, you know, and follow through on that code of conduct. You know, and it seemed like that was one of the things you were talking about here.
Well,
So
that's
sorry about the long story.
No, it's great, but it's so true. It's like at the Kantar Initiative. I've only been there 3 years, but we didn't have a code of conduct either.
Yeah.
And what happened was, we had some situations.
And you had events also?
No, it was not at an event. It was in like just work group meetings, which are virtual.
Okay.
And I started getting complaints about the way the women were being treated on these virtual calls, which I was not a part of. So I started sitting in to see. But it was interesting because I got the complaints not just from women, but from the men.
Yeah.
So I had men complaining to me they didn't like the way the leadership of the group was treating the women in the group. And I was like,
and that's where
holy cow.
that's where it needs to go, where everybody notices.
Right.
Not just the women.
Right. So I had to go to my board of directors and say, not for nothing, we have to do something. And without a code of conduct, it was really hard to take action. We don't have anything to point to.
Right.
Now we have a code of conduct, and we've had to enforce it. And what was interesting is in drafting it, so we have a leadership council and a board of directors at Kantara, and they have different roles, but they're really the leadership of the organization. And it was interesting because when we were writing this, we had members who are men talking about other situations that they had struggled with. Wasn't necessarily about how they were treating women, but other things.
Yeah.
Going to a conference and misrepresenting that you're speaking for the group or for Kantara, right? Things like I would never have known, but they had experienced it and thought that was terrible. And now we can point to it. Now we make sure everybody sees it. So when you sign up to be a part of some group, you have to acknowledge that you've read the code of conduct, whether you have or not, you know, but it makes a difference. So Women in Identity is really trying to take that a step further.
Yeah.
And what they're hoping is that they will be coming together with a set of principles that any organization or company can take and implement in order to be more inclusive in order to make sure that there's that diversity in their product development, by example. So, and some of it is sort of management, right? You know, we know that products created by everyone for everyone are better. They're more robust, and if you can do that from the beginning, so you don't have to go back and sort of retrofit, that makes a huge difference. So it's
not going to happen if you don't have the right people to design stage
right,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
And actually yesterday in the summit I gave an example which is not gender specific but is old, so if you'll bear with me. When YouTube was first developed, as I understand it, it worked great. And they discovered that for some people, though, the video kept coming up upside down. And they couldn't figure out why, for some people, is this upside down?
Yeah.
Product development team were all right-handed. They didn't have a left-hander.
Oh,
and
wow.
so now suddenly left-handed people,
Yeah.
they couldn't get the video to work. It was always upside down.
Yeah.
So
funny.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty simplistic example. They obviously could go back and fix that.
Colorblind comes up all the time. You know,
another good example.
People publish reports with charts, and it's like 7 shades of green. Like, not going to work, guys.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But here's the thing: if you'd had a diverse product team, you wouldn't have to go back, right?
Yeah.
That's always going to be more money.
Yeah.
If you can figure that out.
Yeah.
From the beginning, you know, you're saving yourself.
Yeah.
Money and pain.
So how can people get involved with women in identity?
Well, for starters, membership is free. As I said, it's a nonprofit, so you can go to the website, womeninidentity.org, and sign up to be a member. That gets you our monthly newsletters. We have a jobs board, and it also gives you the opportunity to know about events like this and participate, either by attending or doing things like me. I mean, I'm a volunteer. I'm the U.S. ambassador, which basically means I coordinate a lot of events like Identiverse in the U.S. It's a pretty big country, so we can always use more people to pitch in. And then the other thing, though, is because we want membership to be free, it does cost money to have a website, to do all those things, right? So we need sponsors. And so we look to companies for that. And the research we've done to develop this code of conduct, the one that's coming out next week, is going to talk about the economic impact of people being excluded from being able to have identities. And it's interesting, the foreword is written by a man, and his comments, he's US based, his comments were he read this, the report, and said, you know, it's interesting, we think of like third world countries, where that's where people struggle to find a birth certificate and all of that. He said the truth is, there's like 4 million people in the US who struggle to have an identity, who can't get a birth certificate for a whole bunch of different reasons, which he cites in his foreword. But it's interesting to see that it's not something that is a problem. It's a problem here. Anyway, but the companies have helped sponsor the research. We partnered with the London School of Economics, which is very prestigious. The research is really solid and just really provides a good picture. And there's 10 principles that they're saying we really want to include in the code of conduct that companies can take and make their own, and I think really have the potential to make a difference. But we couldn't do that without the sponsors. So.
I'd be interested to see the code of conduct, see if it's, because ours is fairly simple, you know, but the first thing you do when you're going to adopt a code of conduct is you go out and you look for other examples. You know, it's kind of difficult to build that from scratch because as you have to exercise that code of conduct, you know, you realize, okay, maybe we're missing something. Maybe we need to be more specific here. You know, maybe it's not as easy as it could be for somebody to report an incident to us. So yeah, I'll be really interested to read that research when it comes out.
I think it's going to be very exciting.
And what's the next event that you're going to be doing something at?
Well, actually, the next event will be Identity Week Europe. Which is a conference in Amsterdam later in June 17th and 18th.
Great.
And they actually are doing They're doing also a select session on, I think they're calling it Transformative Women.
Okay.
But Women in Identity will be there, myself and other Women in Identity volunteers. I know we're doing a couple of different presentations. And by then, the Code of Conduct will be out, so we'll be able to talk.
Excellent.
I'm trying not to say too much, but it really is good. It's really exciting. And yesterday at the summit here, we did give a few teasers about what some of those principles are. And so, you know, on the one hand, we've not reinvented the wheel. On the other hand, I think when you see the results, in some ways it's sort of groundbreaking because, like you say, you're looking for other examples. These are examples that are really concrete that you can turn around and apply to the work you're doing.
Okay.
And that a company could apply, a company could adopt, or you could implement them yourself as an individual. So
I am intrigued. I'm looking forward to to seeing them. I'll have to make sure. Do you have a newsletter or something I can sign up for?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'll help you do that. That would be fantastic.
I'm thinking, like, how do I not forget this from this? So I'll sign up for that.
We actually are having a virtual launch.
Okay.
Which is going to be over Zoom, and I'll give you the information. You're welcome to sign up, and we'll be making a public announcement and sharing with everyone what's in there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kay, for a great conversation. Legitimately intrigued to check this code of conduct out, and best of luck with Kantara, Women in Identity, and all the events you're going to be doing this year.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for including me.
Likewise. Thank you.